not far away. Let's talk story. It's where my mama was born, it's where I come from, it's where my daddy fell in love not long ago.
Aloha, everyone. This is Larry Camp, and welcome to the Nobody Knows Your Story podcast, which just happens to come with a side of Hawaiiana. Nobody Knows Your Story is a podcast which I believe will impact each listener in a positive way. As you listen to the experiences that have transformed, shaped, and guided each guest, perhaps you'll better understand your own personal journey. Some will surprise, some will make you question, and some will inspire, but all will leave you in a better place for listening in. As for the Hawaiiana, well, that's just a big part of my life story. So I invite you to check in from time to time, or better still, add Nobody Knows Your Story to your list of favorite podcasts. You'll enjoy hearing the life experiences of people just like you.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. You say you love me. I say I love you. So why don't you stop your crying? Dry your weary eyes, 'cause you know I love you. Ooh, baby, here I am. Come rub upon my belly like guava jelly. Ooh, baby, here I am. Come rub upon my belly like guava jelly. Guava jelly, guava jelly, guava jelly, guava jelly.
Aloha, everyone, and thanks for taking a listen to what will be a super interesting story today. We just heard the Ka'au Crater Boys perform Guava Jelly, and mid-podcast we're going to hear Ocean sing Deeper Look. Today's guest, Paul Tijerina, is one passionate dude, but that doesn't mean he's passionate about just one thing. As he tells us his story, we'll get a chance to see how these passions came about and what he's doing today to help others. Paul, welcome to Nobody Knows Your Story.
Thanks for having me on, Larry. I've listened to a couple of your shows and I love it.
Well, right on. You say that your story is a shortcut to health and happiness, so please tell us your story.
Well, it's almost like, where do I start? You'd sent me that initial questionnaire. Initially, I went through like my story from childhood all the way on. Then I thought to myself, I was like, my story's a lot like everyone else's story, like a broken home, or a lot of people's story. Like my parents divorced, I was happy when I was a kid, didn't know what I wanted to do, and kind of the yada, yada, yada thing that I sent you. But what really I felt like was going to be useful for people is if I could use my story to share the things that I've learned so that people can live a better life. And that's really what I want to do today.
Yeah. And we talked about it, and I'm excited to hear that, but I don't want to discount your early years, though, either, because a lot of what happens in those early years, your parents' divorce, moving from Colorado to Mississippi, these types of things, well, they kind of get you going on the trajectory that you go on. And so we need to hear a little bit about that anyway.
No, it definitely shaped my life a little bit. I remember being really happy when I was a kid. I don't know if that resonates with a lot of people, but I was super carefree, always raised my hand in school and, just wore mixed matched clothes. And I think we all kind of start out that way. Parents divorced, and I felt like that kind of did something to me. Ended up moving to Mississippi with my mother. Everything shifted. And I'm realizing this in retrospect. I mean, of course I didn't notice this in the time, but like I got involved with the wrong kids and, started drinking really early. It was the thing to do, as a 15-year-old driving back roads and stuff like that. But I also got sucked into the social pressures of having to have the right shoes and, fit in with everyone else. And I just felt like, looking back, I kind of lost my identity there. And I was also a lot less happy than I remember being as a carefree kid. And I feel like I have some realizations now as to why, or what were some of the contributors to it. And a lot of it had to do with health, because, when I found health, I found myself again, and I was happy again. But I mean, that's the gist of my younger years. I think I told you from there, I ended up enlisting in the military out of high school because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And most people, and this was also a little bit kind of discouraging, most of my classmates were like, they all knew what they wanted to do. They all wanted to go to college for something. They knew what college they wanted to go to. And even back then, I kind of knew that I wasn't going to waste money going to do something that I thought that I wanted to do then, because I knew I didn't know what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I could have convinced myself that I thought I wanted to do something, but I'm freaking 17 years old,
Yeah.
So I felt like my only option was just enlist in the military. So that's what I did. Enlist in the military, go out, earn a paycheck, get on my own, which I felt like that self-reliance was really important. And that was really, really good for me. I remember getting out on my own. It was difficult, leaving my girlfriend, leaving my mom, leaving my family. But there was something about that being on your own self-reliance thing that really, really resonated with me. And I think I told you too in response to your email, the structure of the military, like I really resonated with. That was the thing that I was missing in high school. The constant fitness. I mean, I got bit by the fitness bug, and it stuck with me the rest of my life. But the constant fitness, the rigid structure, I just really thrived in that environment. Really, really enjoyed it. Even though it was in some ways very difficult and challenging and miserable, because I went infantry, I went to Fort Benning, I was light infantry, and that was back when I feel like basic was still really challenging, especially if you're in the combat arms.
And it is. And I just saw this morning, this is so interesting, that only 1 out of 4 that want to enter the military are physically in shape to do it. So now they have this whole area of the Army where they send people that want to join to just get in shape.
To get them up to speed.
Yeah.
And they've also lowered the standards a lot.
Yeah, they've had to.
And
Yeah, we just came up, and the point of the article was, this is the 50-year anniversary of not having a draft.
Right.
Where it's a volunteer services and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's so there's no doubt that when you were there, and especially the way that you were driven, that fitness was a big part of it.
Huge, yeah. And I felt like, again, I was, you know what I mean when I say infantry?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So light infantry, combat arms, my drill sergeants they were hardcore. Like, this was back when you could still get in fist fights with your drill sergeant in the woods, okay, you want to settle this? Let's go, But for some reason, I just really thrived in that environment. When you're enduring challenges with other people, like friends and comrades, there's something great about that you can laugh about it and talk about it afterwards. And so, like, when you suffer with other people, it's an amazing experience. Kind of reminds me now, like, sometimes when you go back, you ever go backpacking and do some outdoor stuff like that?
We do something. We do a lot of hiking. Yeah.
Yeah. If you go out and you're like on your own in the middle of nowhere, except for, you're basically surviving off of what you have in your backpack, and, maybe you're, filtering some water or catching some fish or something. Like, sometimes that's miserable conditions, but it's enjoyable because you're doing it with other people. The suffering with other people is really, really great.
Yeah. The physical side of it. And I'm bringing up the physical side because I know that plays so much into your story for the rest of your life. But yeah, so the military, and then we got to talk about West Point though a little bit.
Yeah. So getting into, being enlisted, I had some really, really good leaders and mentors that just pulled me aside and were like, hey, you need to be an officer. You need to find a way to do something a little bit more different, and we found a way for enlisted people to get to West Point. So they would compete for appointments through SAT, ACT scores, physical fitness, military discipline type stuff. And, I got an appointment at West Point. So that was a great experience.
And not to discount that, you always, your schooling, it was easy for you. You did well in math, as I recall. So you were pretty bright, because you don't just get into West Point because, you're physically fit or whatever. And you were, like you say, you were an enlisted person, so you're competing for those positions. They only let so many people in.
Yeah, I feel like, that leads to my first disillusion moment. I told you I wanted this story, or my story, to be a story of like my different learnings that I've had throughout my life, so that I can share that with other people and they can learn from that. So going to West Point, my expectations were that it was going to be like the hardest thing ever. Like, I was going to come out of there this forged, hardcore, freaking just ready for anything kind of guy. And it wasn't that. Like, that was my first disillusionment, was getting there and just realizing, and a lot of the prior service people felt the same way, especially if they were in combat arms. You know, a lot of us kind of congregated together up there, and it was challenging. I mean, it's very different from a normal college experience. You know, you have your academic load, and then you have your fitness load and the military part of it. So it was definitely not like a party college or anything like that. But for me, my expectations were that it was going to be extremely challenging, and it just wasn't that. I saw a lot of political correctness. And I feel like at that time also, I was starting to see what I felt like was the truth about what was happening with the U.S. and the world. So I don't know if I told you this, but I had a girlfriend at the time that was German, and I had some friends that were from other countries. And when I would talk about the U.S. and my pride in it and how I wanted to be a lifer in the Army, I was very patriotic. And they were like, well, this is the way the rest of the world sees you guys. You know, we're invading other countries. We're imposing ourselves and our beliefs on other people. And I was raised to think that the U.S. was spreading democracy and freedom and Christianity. And from my perspective, that's not what I saw. I didn't feel like that was what was happening. So that was a huge disillusionment moment and then also thinking about going to combat, right, and killing somebody. And the guy on the other end of my sights or my barrel was a guy just like me. Mm-hmm. I had that realization up there. Like, he was a guy that was, for whatever reason, got into his military, whether he was drafted or doing it for a paycheck. You know, he was a human being that had a family, had kids, responsibilities, and what right in the world do I have to take this guy's life? I mean, you said you lost your son. For what? For my country? This dude didn't do anything to me. So I was having all those kinds of thoughts when I was there in school. I feel like that changed me in some ways in a good direction. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, except that kind of instilled a little bit of rebelliousness in me, I think.
I think that's probably a normal feeling that a lot of people have. There was a point in this show, Pacific, that HBO miniseries, where one of the U.S. soldiers was looking at this Japanese soldier that he had just shot, and he was looking at him, and he was experiencing exactly what you just said, kind of going through that. He's just here doing his job, doing what he was asked to do. And like you said, you mentioned my son. You know, when you have somebody close to you that passes, yeah, lots of questions, lots of things. So I can understand having those questions, even though I didn't serve in the military, but I can certainly understand how somebody like yourself or those that have would just kind of think about those thoughts, especially if you ever get deployed and you're there and you got your sights on the enemy. So that would be a tough thing.
Yeah, humanizing that whole experience is just it's strange, right? Because you're taught just kill the enemy, they're the bad guys, but to them, we're the bad guys. Mm-hmm. It's just flipped around. I mean, you know, they believe in their ideology and what they're doing just as much as we do. So that kind of took this idea of being a lifer and staying in the military out. Like, I didn't really have much of an interest. I do feel like the military is a great thing for people to get into, to just get on their own, earn a paycheck, you know, get some self-reliance and independence. But for me, I didn't feel comfortable with it. So,
yeah. So you got out. Did you go back to Mississippi?
No, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I went to a Manhattan bartending school because I was like, yeah, I'd love to bartend. And so kind of lived a bartending wildlife for a little bit. That was really fun. The bartending school in Manhattan was awesome. And then ended up settling, where the heck was my first? Oh, it was actually near Fort Benning. It was in Columbus, Georgia. I had a bartending job there and lived there for a little bit. And then eventually, you know, I had to do something as what I would consider to be a career. So got into insurance. And insurance, I felt like, was one of those things, commission only, you can make any income you want. And so it's time for me to get into something that I can make a really substantial income at. And I hated every bit of it. It was miserable, you know. That was another one of my disillusion moments, was realizing like, hey, I can make really good money, but is it worth me being so unhappy with what it is that I'm doing? And I feel like sometimes you can have this compromise where you say, hey, I'm doing this to earn a paycheck so that I can live my life. And I think that's great if you have that realization and you have that conscious conversation with yourself. But for me, I had this desire to like do something different, something big. I wanted to make an impact, and I wanted to enjoy this, like you said earlier, this only life that we know that we have. Maybe there's something afterwards, you know, but for as far as we know, this is the one life that we have here this way. and I wanted to make the most of it. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I did have the realization that I'm not happy doing what I'm doing right now. I don't care how much money I make. And I feel like asking that question, like, what is it that I can do? How can I make an impact? How can I help? I think asking those questions, expecting an answer, but not expecting an answer right away is really, really useful, just to put it out there.
Yeah. And you were still single, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was in and out of relationships.
For people who get married, have kids right off the bat, sometimes they get locked in. Yeah. And even though they're unhappy in their job and what they're doing, they don't really have a choice.
That's right.
So you still had choices.
We were talking about that last night. It's, I'm very thankful to have had these realizations on my own and being independent, because you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's almost like our paths are to some degree predetermined, and there's a lot of great things that come from that too. But so I planted the seed for trying to figure something out, to do that I actually really, really enjoyed. And I think the next big pivot moment was when I went to the doctor for the first time since being out of the Army, and I had all these health issues. I thought I was extremely healthy, and it was a wake-up call. It was devastating, really, to be standing in front of a doctor. My blood pressure was so high. He was stunned that I wasn't having a heart attack right there in front of him. He's like, you got to get on blood pressure meds. I was pre-diabetic. I had all kinds of different symptoms that I wasn't really, I think I was just rationalizing away because I felt like I was so freaking healthy.
But you'd also put on a lot of weight.
But it was a slow process, right? Like it happens for most people. So again, like I'm lifting weights every day. I'm big, I'm muscular. I'm doing what I thought were all the right things, all the right dietary things. I was reading everything from freaking Muscle and Fitness and Flex and Men's Health and just all the mainstream advice. And I was like, I was disillusioned, because I was like, I thought I was doing everything right to a T, and this is where I am. And I had this realization that maybe some of what I think is healthy is not healthy. Maybe some of what I think is the truth is not. And that was a really good lesson for me. And I've taken that with me from that point forward, because I feel like once you can do that in any area of your life, you open the possibility to learn new information and learn new truths. So that was a huge turning point in my life, just realizing that maybe what I thought was healthy was not. And that was a hard pill to swallow, because I dedicated my life to fitness and health up to that point. So that really put me on this quest to figure out what the heck the truth was behind nutrition and health and just living a healthy and happy life.
And usually what the next thing is a change in diet, if nothing else. I think for a lot of people, now you were exercising, you were lifting, you were doing things. A lot of people aren't doing any of that. Yeah. They've put on the weight. They need to do something, so they do the dieting. They change. They sometimes go on to these fad diets, or they could maybe go extreme and go to vegetarianism or vegan or something like that. So I know that for you, some of that came into play. I'm not sure if this is the time it did, but what was the next step after that doctor appointment? Well,
I mean, you're right. A lot of people, I think nutrition tends to be nutrition and fitness are the first things people turn to make a change. For me, I felt like I knew a lot. And then to have these diagnoses, I realized I didn't know the right info. I don't know. It was like this convergence of a perfect storm that made me experiment with something else. So my father's late wife, she passed away from cancer treatment. She didn't pass away from cancer. She passed away from radiation and chemo. But as she was going through that process, I saw her suffering, and it was heartbreaking. And at the same time, I had a girlfriend whose mother was going through some similar treatments. And I felt like after realizing the reason that I'm where I'm at with my health is because I was not making the right choices, even though I thought I was, there had to be some component to this cancer situation that was nutrition and health related. And so I went out and just researched as much as I could in every direction, and I found a lot of alternative cancer therapies that have a lot of great testimonials and reviews. One of them was the Gerson therapy. Have you ever heard of that by any chance?
No, I saw in your notes, though, you mentioned it, but I have not heard of it. And I've had a lot of cancer in my family.
Yeah. So not to get too caught up in the specific therapy, but it was one of the alternative cancer therapies, very vegan oriented, although they do recommend some animal-based products for their nutritional value, but it was very vegan oriented. And I love it. I still love it as an alternative to cancer therapy. But because I was so immersed in that to help these people that I cared about, I couldn't help but go vegan. Like I fell for the saturated fat and the meat's bad for you kind of thing. So that was my first dietary experience after that disillusionment, after being diagnosed with all those different things. I was vegan for almost 2 years. And I remember the first 3 months, I felt so freaking good. I lost weight. I remember I still have emails that I sent to my family about how to combine grains and legumes to get certain amino acid profiles. And I was just, like a Bible beater for the vegan movement for a little bit. But it wasn't long. I think about 18 months in, again, it was a hard realization, but I'd already had that previous realization that maybe some of what I think is healthy is not healthy. So I had to sit and be honest with myself. I was losing muscle mass. I had really low energy. I had different skin issues than I'd had before, different digestive issues. And I felt like, okay, I'm doing this as right as I can based on what I know now. Of course, like I know how to be a better, smarter vegan if I was going to do that, although I would never do it. But in that moment, I felt like I was doing the best I could. And I said, this can't be the complete story. So that was another turning point for me. I was like, there's got to be something that I'm missing or something that I'm not factoring in that would contribute to feeling better. And so that was another big turning point.
Plus, Paul, you were missing a cheeseburger once in a while.
100%. I live off of that these days. Wait till we get into it.
Yeah. And I'm only saying that because I'm thinking of my nephew, Robbie. He did that for, I think he lasted like 3 or 4 years. And then one time because we don't see each other all the time. He lives in Northern California and we were at some family function and I saw him over in the line for a burger. I'm like, dude, and he goes, yeah, I'm back.
He's like, I'm breaking down. I can't take it.
Yeah.
No, I can't wait to get into what it is that I think is really healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So somehow from that point, I found information on ancestral ways of eating, ancestral, lifestyle practices. This is way before paleo ever became a thing. And, I'd read some papers by Lauren Corday and Boyd Eaton. And so I kind of went down this rabbit hole. Have you ever heard of the Weston A. Price Foundation?
I have not.
Yeah, it's a great organization. But anyway, that resonated with me. I grew up just adoring Indiana Jones, and I love archaeology and dinosaurs. And so when I started to read and interpret these things from an ancestral perspective, what was it that our healthy ancestors did before modernization? That really resonated with me. And part of that message was, eating animal foods. And so I started to bring back in meat and started to learn how to read labels and ingredients and then adopted health-based, ancestral-based health practices like, functional fitness and getting outside and getting barefoot and getting sun. And everything changed so dramatically. I was so freaking excited. I loved my life so much just because of the way that I felt that I was like, I'm going to make a career out of this. Like I'm going to get rid of my insurance practice. I sold all my business and ended up moving to Vegas just to chase this dream. And I had nothing. I remember I had a buddy, one of my best friends from West Point. His father had a vacation home there in Vegas, and I got to sleep on the couch there. And I didn't have Facebook, didn't have Instagram, and started from zero. But I was just so convinced and so excited about this way of doing things. I knew it was something that so many people had to hear because so many people's story is probably just like my story, trying to do the right thing, but it's just the wrong information. And that's where my health coaching career really started.
Now, on a timeline, would this been like maybe 12, 15 years ago?
Yeah, it was about 12 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Moved to Vegas. I think it was like 2010 or something like that.
And you were in Vegas about 10 years?
Yeah.
So, yeah, talk about that experience then and kind of what went on then.
Well,
because that's when you started, like you say, your health-based career, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I started with friends and family. And because they were easy, they were free, they were experimental, and I found some, what I felt like were the only education that aligned with these principles in the Weston A. Price Foundation was the Nutritional Therapy Association. And I absolutely adore them. They gave me such a great foundation. They had a distance course that was in Vegas, and I didn't understand what distance course means. I moved to Vegas to take this course, but they just basically came down there. I think it was like once a month and once every 3 months. And then the remaining education and testing was done remotely. So, but it was as good an excuse as any to move there. So went through that certification and it gave me a really, really great foundation. And from that point forward, I just remember, sometimes I'll come across some of my older videos. I was so rebellious. I was so, in a good way though, like it was really exciting. I was so anti-conventional wisdom, bucking the norm. I had to, 10, 12 years ago, every talk that I did, especially if it was nutrition based, I had to do so much discussion around like butter and bacon and beef, because at that point, today, if you tell someone like butter's better than margarine, I mean, you've probably heard that, right?
Yep.
So that was back in the time where that wasn't so mainstream. So I had to do a lot of debunking conventional wisdom, which I don't have to do as much of that now, because most people have heard, oh yeah, I heard butter is better for you. So I just remember those early years, maybe the first, 3 to 5 years, I was just very, very just kind of in your face, debunking conventional wisdom. It was a great experience. I built a great community there. We had just a lot of great talks. I was partnered with a CrossFit gym, and my best friend owned the CrossFit gym. And so together we were empowering people with our unique talents, and it was just such a fun and exciting time. We were always hosting hikes and dinners and getaways and massive talks, like I'd have talks and I'd be mic'd up and, hundreds of people in the room. And it was just great. It was really, really great. At some point, I drifted away from that rebelliousness and tried to be a little bit more politically correct, I guess, a little bit more neutral. And now I've swung back into being super passionate about like, this is the time that you got to figure this stuff out. I mean, the world is moving in some strange directions. And I'd say the best thing that you can do with all this unpredictability is focus on your health and yourself, because a better you is going to be better for anything that happens to you in the future. Right. And I just feel like I can't waste time anymore. So I'm back in this mode of, you got to wake up. You got to learn the truth about what it is that you need to do to be healthy. And I'm not worried about offending people anymore, because I know from my perspective and my experience and working with clients and my thousands of hours of coaching, I know what I feel is the truth, and I'm ultra confident in it.
They can't take away all my childhood memories, can't take away all my different color family, can't take away all the culture, it's a part of me, it's a part of me, yeah. I don't deal with nationality, just personality. Everybody's mixed, that's reality. I don't deal with no fashionality, down with supremacy. Open up the people, I make them see that you can't judge a man like me. Like the cover on a book, unless you take it deep and look. Consciousness, yes, it burns inside like a fire in the night, see it far and wide. Ignorance across the hills and seas, you can find it in the trees and in the palm trees. Everywhere across the world, internationally, stereotyping and dividing what a folly. Jolly is a man finding bliss and never knowing. Unity of flower got to keep on growing. Nationality, just personality. Everybody's mixed, that's reality. I don't deal with no fashionality, down with supremacy. Open up the people, I make them see that you can't judge a man like me. Like the cover on a book, unless you take it deep and look. Where did I see all the inequality? I seen it every day in the penitentiary. Where did I see some inequality? Yes, I said I seen it in the penitentiary. 3 long years while the sun stays setting, faced my fears and there's no more regretting. Babylon, I tried to make a racial category. You from where you from and what is your life story? They can't take away all my childhood memories, can't take away all my different color family, can't take away all the culture, it's a part of me, it's a part of me, yeah. I don't deal with nationality, just personality. Everybody's mixed, that's reality. I don't deal with no fashionality, down with supremacy. Open up the people, I make them see that you can't judge a man like me. Like the cover on a book, unless you take it deep and look. Kain kala barata bilo yumi. Kain kala sosa bilo yumi. Kain kala poro mani stop na bout. All same na me talk out. Mi no busy long online ni sabe kusai. Mi kisi orgul pella sabe bilo Rastafari. Orgul pella man mi looking by mi se canta. Sol mi tanya met na giving backside long ol con man. Mi no busy long ol no good man. Mi no busy long ol big head man. Me no sabe busy long con man. Now gelly too. Me no busy, me no busy. I don't deal with nationality, just personality. Everybody's mixed, that's reality. I don't deal with no fashionality, down with supremacy. Open up the people, I make them see that you can't judge a man like me. Like the cover on a book, unless you dig a deeper look.
As I listen to you talk, and I can feel your passion, but it also reminds me of somebody who's maybe joined a religion, and
Almost,
because
right.
when you join that religion, you're gun ho, man, and you want to tell others about it, and you tell your family, and tell your friends, and so I totally get that. I have experienced things similar in my life, but I also know that when you were in Las Vegas, and I think it was not too long after you arrived there, didn't you meet your wife?
Well, that was after I had been there for a pretty long, I mean, maybe 8 years.
Oh,
so it was
okay.
at the tail end of it. Yeah, at the tail end of it. Yeah. And we got divorced.
Yeah, but that also brought you to Utah, right?
That is what brought me to Utah. So, yeah, that was a dream come true. It was like what was I, when I met her, I was like, 45, 46. So basically waited my entire life to meet someone that I felt like, hey, I'm ready to commit the rest of my life to you. And we left Vegas to move closer to her parents, and things just didn't work out, and ended up just kind of being in Utah, not knowing where or what I wanted to do. I left my practice. I left this community. Since her brother was my best friend and owned the gym, like that was, I just didn't feel like going back to Vegas was an option for me.
Did she share your passions for the health and everything that you were doing? So
that's how we met. She actually, she had watched a bunch of my videos, and she'd lost a ton of weight and come off a bunch of meds. And then we ended up meeting and just hitting it off.
Yeah.
So that kind of sparked, I'm up in Farmington, Utah. I have no idea where I want to go or what I want to do. And I was like, I'm not going back to Vegas. There's no place that I have this strong desire to live. And I ended up getting a camper trailer, and I'm like, I'm just going to travel the nation, sharing my message of health from this overlanding perspective, camping life perspective. And because I'm doing it from that perspective, I'm also having to share how to simplify your life, because everything that I own is in this camper trailer in my Jeep with me.
Okay. And that would have been maybe 2-3 years ago?
No, I just started that a couple months ago.
A couple months ago. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, when you go through a relationship I got married early on, didn't work out. I always say I was a starter husband, but I learned from it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you did too.
For sure.
There's some takeaways there. So, I just always try and look for the positive in things that happen in life. Sometimes it's difficult with certain things that happen, but if you give yourself some time and, you can be honest when you're evaluating what did happen, there are some positive takeaways, and I'm sure you got some out of your experience.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm on a trajectory that I haven't been this excited in a really long time, because it's a whole new world, and I'm reinvigorated with my passion for what I'm doing. I feel like I kind of got lost being in Vegas for so long. I kind of got stagnant. It's reinvigorated me to get out and spread this message. And it's so much easier to do it on my own. Not to say that I'm not going to meet someone else at some point in the future, which I'm sure I will, but for the time being, like, I'm just excited to this is my focus, is sharing this message and being as healthy as I can.
So what the message that you're sharing now, then, are you going to stay here in this area of Southern Utah for a little bit, or are you just here for a short time and you're heading out? And do you have a plan in place?
Well, not really. I mean, I'm trying to follow the weather, and it's hot here. So I came through to visit Shane for a little bit. Shane, luckily he has an RV that he's not using. And he's like, dude, I'm going to call on the air conditioner in there and cool that thing down. And I want you to stay for a little bit. And I was like, if I got a cool place to sleep, then I can do that, because I was just going to duck in and duck out because it's so freaking hot, and go up to Panguitch or Bryan Head or something like that up in the mountains. And it's been great. Like, I've met some great people, had this opportunity with you, and from here, I literally, I'm just going to follow the weather and just find one of the things that's kind of dictating my path. And it's as good a reason as any for me to go somewhere is I'm trying to connect with local ranchers that raise beef and to see what their operation is like, kind of share this message of the benefits of eating beef and what that experience is like, what it's actually like for a cow to be on a ranch. I'm visiting regenerative ranchers, conventional beef ranchers, and that's kind of creating my path. And then as I'm doing that, I'm doing health talks and getting on podcasts and still maintaining my private health coaching practice.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, so if you were to give some advice to people right now that are listening to this podcast, and maybe they are at a place maybe where you were, where maybe they just aren't feeling as good as they did in the past, or they just want to feel better. Everybody's getting older every day, right? So, I mean, what would the advice from a health standpoint be that you would give to them?
Well, I sent you those questions, and I mean, we could use you as a case study if you wanted to.
Sure.
I mean, but we don't have to. I mean, I'd say in general.
But I'm an old dude too, so
it doesn't matter. That's the thing. So that's part of what I feel like is. Maybe brainwashing is a strong word, but like we're convinced to think that as we get older, it's the natural progression that we're going to decline. And definitely there's some things that aren't in your favor. Like when you're younger, you got your hormones in your favor and you pretty much eat and do anything and you're going to stay lean and be strong. And so there's some challenges as far as that goes. But if you were to look at yourself on a spectrum of where you are, what's possible, what you don't know what's possible, and then everything between where you are and that, like you can get better from where you are, and you'd be blown away at how much better you could get. I mean, I completely turned my health around in my mid-30s, and I'm stronger and healthier now than I've ever been in my life, stronger than I was in my 20s. I can do things that I didn't think were possible. So I'd say that's an example. It doesn't have to be that way. You don't have this sentence of you're going to naturally decline as you get older. You can get better from where you are no matter what. But most people, when they come to me, fat loss is a big one. I actually work with a lot of recovering vegans that come to me because they just, like you have this honeymoon phase where you feel amazing. And then if you're honest with yourself, there are these outliers that have these genetic predispositions to be able to make certain conversions for certain nutrients and they do okay, without animal foods. But most of them, if they do it for any significant period of time, end up having some difficulties if they're not very strategic with their supplementation. So I work with a lot of recovering vegans, trying to help them reintroduce meat, and you have to factor in like the environmental and ethical and things that are really important to these people. And then also low energy, digestive issues, probably the big things you had mentioned, sleep is a big one. And then I feel like I work with a lot of people that I call it second half of life. So, and that's kind of where we're at, right? Trying to live your best life, second half of life, undoing a lot of damage and just really wanting to live a good life so you can be there for your kids and grandkids and do activities and be functional, because that's really what it's about. Like all these different health practices, when you think about it, a lot of us come to a nutrition plan or we embark on working out because we have these superficial aesthetic changes we want to see. But when we dig really deep, most people, they're doing it because they want to live a good life and they want to be there for their kids and their grandkids. And it's not even about longevity. It's about a good quality of life. You want to be like a parent or a grandparent. If your kid or grandkid says, "Hey, I want to go climb to the top of that mountain," or "I'll race you up the stairs," or something like you want to be able to do those types of things and enjoy your freaking life.
So for me, I would rather live, even if I'm only alive till 78 and be healthy and active and be able to do all the things you just said, than live to be 90, but be sitting in a chair watching Netflix or whatever. So I've been fortunate that I've always had the exercise bug my entire life. I mean, I've already been out and walked 4 miles this morning. My wife is preparing for a triathlon right now. We have continually done this stuff throughout our whole marriage. We've been married 42 years. So I still play tournament softball, which all my listeners hear way too much of, but we're always doing things. We're always on hikes. We're always on, bike rides or playing pickleball or whatever. So we try and stay very active. If I was 260 pounds, I couldn't be doing a lot of these things.
Yeah.
So to me, the benefit of walking and running, which I don't do anymore, but I did used to run. I've done 25,000 miles in the last 22 years. That has helped me. Could I be in better shape? Yeah. And I think that's what we're talking about. So, and that's, I'm always trying to do better.
Yep.
you know, whether it's health, eating better, or finding the exercises. Because if I go to the gym and I lift, which I just did a couple weeks ago, and I'm saying a couple weeks ago because I was so sore for the next 3 or 4 days because I'd gotten out of lifting. And you have to get back into it. But I mean, I did like 1 rep, you know, went to the chest and did 8 reps, did the lat pull downs, did 8 reps. So, I mean, this was not a big workout. I was done in 10 minutes. I was sore for like 4 days, man. So that's the thing you're talking about as you get older. The recovery is longer and it just, you know, so.
Well, you asked like, what are the things that we can do? Right. And I feel like fitness is so important. And getting it any way that you can, you know, so like you said, just living an active lifestyle. Just by doing that, it's synergistic with everything else because you're going to have a desire. Hey, if I'm putting all this work into my physical activity, like I might as well do better with my diet. And that may even be unconscious. So a lot of people that try to live an active lifestyle are naturally going to eat better. So I think that's probably like a really, really good first step for most people. Doesn't mean you have to join a gym and go kill yourself. And it means that you can do exactly what you said, like activities you enjoy and walk and play golf and just have an active mindset. I think a lot of people probably get overwhelmed with this idea that I got to buy a gym membership and join a gym. I got a family. I don't have time to go to a gym. And the majority of my clients actually just get great workouts by staying active all day and taking breaks and taking movement breaks and stretching throughout the day. So that would be, I think, like probably one of the first and easiest things that most people could do is just have this mentality of being active all the time. And then from there, you can probably graduate into, I would say extremely important would be resistance training. Because when you think about what aging is for most of us, it's a disease of wasting away. Like, you know, you lose muscle mass, you lose your bone density, your bone strength. And the counter to that is resistance training. You know, it's almost like the more muscle that you have, the stronger you are, the longer you're going to live and the better you're going to live because the more stuff you can do. So I'm a huge fan of that. I mean, getting fitness in any way that resonates with you or in any way that you can initially is better than not doing anything at all. But I think as you age, it's extremely important to focus on resistance training because it's just so hard to hold on to muscle the older that you get.
Yeah, and holding on is really all I want to do. I'm not looking to bulk up or anything. I'm realistic about where I am in life. But we know that we lose testosterone every year, and I think it starts in your 30s, you know. So by the time I'm 67, by the time you get to be my age, I just want to maintain. I can just maintain because, you know, when do I run anymore? Well, I run if I'm on first and I need to get to third.
There you go.
That's the only time I run. Is that maybe to loosen up before a game or something? I might jog around the outfield or something.
But you can still do it.
Yeah.
You know, you can still sprint.
Yes,
from first
I can.
base to second base. And that's really, really useful, you know, from a primordial perspective, right? You have someone break into your home, you got to run down the street or something, you know, like it's functional. But yeah, you're right. But I want to push back just a little bit on the testosterone thing. Like we've been told that, right? My testosterone levels are freaking amazing, but they weren't before I figured all this out. So there's something about just having this belief that if I put all these different things into place and practice, then I have no idea how good things can get, you know, and the bulking up thing is a concern for a lot of people. You're not going to bulk up to a degree that you don't want to, you know, just from lifting weights and eating protein. So it's almost like the more you can do that stuff, the better. But,
so you're saying that with some of the health changes, we might be able to regenerate and bring back some of the tetestosterone that we've lost.
Absolutely. You think about what it requires to create testosterone. A big part of that is going to be your nutrition. I mean, we go into like, you know, exposure to different toxins in the environment and EMFs and radiation, but the things that are easy to control, you know, functional fitness, lifting heavy weights stimulates production of testosterone, and there's precursors, nutrient precursors. A lot of them are the things that we're told to avoid. You know, so if you focused on an animal-based way of eating and you're protein-centric, then you're giving your body all the precursors that it needs to create testosterone. And then, of course, you know, you need to sleep and some other things. But my point there is that the possibilities are endless. Like you really have no idea how good it can get when you factor in all these different things that you should do for health.
Very cool. Well, it, you know, kind of inspires me. I mean, that's the thing, though. We should be inspired. Hopefully that we can see something on the news or we can hear something from a friend or somebody on a podcast and be inspired to maybe make some changes. And they don't always have to be huge changes. Sometimes it's just, like you say, get up and get off the couch and get moving and doing things, because once you retire from your job, you better have some hobbies, because the people that don't, life's no fun.
Yeah.
And
You need to make fitness a hobby. Like I'm staying at Shane's right now, and we have some friends come over, some great people that I've met. I mean, I'm just so thankful that I'm here. It's just this weird vortex of like just some really good connections. And, and I get up every morning and I work out, whether I work out there with my dumbbells or I got a little temporary membership down here at Devasa. But I think the ultimate goal would be to make these health practices foundational in your life so that no matter what your life situation is, these things are non-negotiable. That's where I want my clients to get to, is where it's like, okay, I got to do these simple, basic things every single freaking day. And if I do these things, then no matter how I live the rest of my life, it's going to be way better than if I didn't do these things.
Yeah. And it doesn't always have to be this, hour and a half set aside
Not
to
at
work
all.
out.
No.
For a lot of people, especially I'm talking now to the ones that maybe aren't working anymore and they're in those maybe semi-retired years or whatever, just doing something every day. There's not a day that I won't do something. And maybe I only had 20 minutes that day to go for a walk, but I'll still do it because, well, I'd feel guilty if I didn't, but I also know that that's the secret to being able to do the things that we talked about. Yeah. Having good times with your grandkids, still being active and playing sports and doing things as you keep getting older. I've got friends that I'm playing ball with that are in their mid-70s, and they inspire me. Yeah.
The activity piece, huge. But again, just to make a plug for it, any way you can get it, like you're saying, just having this mentality of I need to do something every day. Ideally, you're moving towards some kind of resistance training, some functional resistance training. Can we talk about like nutrition type stuff for a little bit?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So, I think another really useful thing that people can do is focus on protein, like being protein centric. You think about like what it takes to build muscle, amino acids are a big part of it. And when we focus on sources of protein, we're not just getting protein, especially if you do it from animal foods. You're getting a lot of things that come from that. When you think about eating a piece of steak, you're not just getting protein. Like you're getting protein, you're getting fatty acids, minerals, vitamins, connective tissue. You're getting everything this body needs to build this body. So, and then protein not only builds an amazing body, so if you're putting in the fitness work, you're going to be, helping to recover and build and repair. It's also a great appetite regulator. The more protein centric you become, it's easier to stick to the rest of your diet because you don't have cravings, or you minimize your cravings for other things because you're becoming nutritionally sufficient. And really, when you think about what is hunger, when you experience hunger is your body screaming out for either nutrients or energy. And if you're protein centric, then you eliminate the hunger signal, or you minimize that hunger signal from being nutrient deficient, and it makes things so much freaking easier.
Do you kind of have a moderation in all things mentality, or do you have like a cheat day mentality where I do 6 days of this and then I'll have one day to do what I want? How do you do it?
Well, it depends. So when I work with my health coaching clients, I got to meet them where they are, So, I had a client not too long ago signed up, and she was, we're learning the basics, how to read ingredients, how to, choose appropriate foods. And then we get into like structuring meals, and she's like, look, my family's Italian, and every Sunday we're going to have pasta and bread. And she's like, I enjoy it, and I'm not going to give that up. And I'm like, that's totally fine. You can make that decision. What we're looking for is the spectrum of always trying to improve and be a little bit better. So if you go from eating inappropriately most of the time, and then you get 6 days out of 7 right, and you still have your little, Sunday Italian day, that's a big win. Mm-hmm. And she saw dramatic changes. And then guess what? The bread and pasta and all that stuff on Sundays made her feel like such junk that she's like, you know what? I'm not going to do that anymore. And we worked on alternatives for the things that she liked, made with better ingredients. So I think it's just relative to where you're at and how much you're willing to commit to the whole thing and how much change you want to experience. But I'd say any change is great. When you experience change, I feel like sometimes for a lot of people, it's motivational and inspirational to get them to want to do a little bit more, So I think it is useful in the beginning to build in some flexibility, some guardrails, giving yourself like, what's your vices, or what do you like to do that you feel like is not appropriate that you'd still allow yourself to do?
I would allow myself to occasionally do. We probably alcohol stuff. We like to drink at times, and I'll be honest. A lot of times we go to a lot of gatherings. I mean, I'm talking 2 or 3 a week. Yeah. Because we all are in the same place in life for the most part, where we have plenty of time to get together, and so a lot of times there'll be alcohol there, and so I will usually not do that except about once every 10 days or so.
That's great.
So just because I don't want to get into that habit of doing it all the time. a lot of sugars, a lot of, and you know what else goes with alcohol? Food.
Yep, absolutely.
So when you're
I was going to
drinking,
say your
you're
appetite
eating,
completely
and you're
changes.
eating junk.
Yep. Yeah. So again, like, you found, hey, I enjoy this enough to allow it this often in my life. And I think you have to factor that in. Like, I want to enjoy my life. I don't want to be such a zealot with what it is that I'm doing with my health that I'm not enjoying life. But you also at some point have to be honest with yourself about, like, hey, if I'm not experiencing the changes that I want to experience, then what is it that I'm doing that I could do different or better that would give me the changes that I want? It's like you can't rationalize those things away if you're not experiencing the changes that you want. But I think building in some flexibility and some indulgences and things like that are great for people.
Yeah, and I'm not fanatical. I think I mentioned that to you. I'm doing the
once every 10 days, man. That's great.
Yeah, well, you know what? Yeah, but I mean, I've never been a big drinker anyway, but those are things that I enjoy doing in the right social setting and different things like that. Yeah. But again, kind of in moderation. I just don't do it all the time because I just know that the downside is there for sure.
Yeah.
And the other side for me is I like salty things. But instead of going in and grabbing a bag of chips and sitting down and watching a show, I'll go in and have 7 chips. And there we go. Yeah. And I can do that. Yeah. And it kind of takes care of that little craving that I have right then. And would I like more? Sure. But, I also know that more is not right. So.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people don't have that self-control for those different things. You had said in your response to my questions, everything in moderation. And for the people that can actually do that, then that can be a good strategy. I feel like that moderation message is a very mainstream nutrition, registered dietitian, piece of advice. And I would say that there's just some things that are just toxic and you shouldn't eat them. And if you decide to, then you just know, just like with alcoholic drinks, there's no benefit. There's no health benefit to drinking.
Right.
There's the social benefit, right? I may experience some health benefits from that social aspect, but there's just things that just aren't appropriate, and you can decide how often you do those things. And then there's things that are really good for you. And that's where you want to focus the majority of your efforts.
Now, if people want to get a hold of you, Paul, do you have a website or someplace that they could reach out to you?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So what's your website?
So health coaching website is superhumantransformation.com. I'll give you my link tree too, because I have what I like to do for people that I visit with, like yourself. I'll give your listeners my free, I call it my rules for life. And it's my rules. Like, if you put these things into practice, it covers everything from nutrition to ancestral lifestyle practices and simplifying life. But anyway, superhumantransformation.com is my health coaching site. So if you want to, just see what other people have had to say about their experience with me, or apply for health coaching, or just reach out and schedule a visit with me, that's where you do that. I'm on Instagram, Paul C. Tijerina. YouTube, I've got a couple of different YouTube channels. I got one that's documenting this camping life overlanding journey that I'm on, called Operation Rewild. And then I have my Superhuman Transformation YouTube channels loaded with a lot of educational stuff.
So what I'll do is I'll put a lot of that in the show notes then too, because even though you're saying all that, I mean, people are listening in their car, they're out on walks right now, so they're not going to remember that. But I'll put it in the show notes, and so that they can, at the very least, maybe follow what you're doing. But I'm sure there's some people out there that want to reach out to you with some questions too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my one of my buddies, my nutrition cohorts, he's always like, don't say the URLs for those things, because people can't. They're not going to sit there and write it down. Just say it's going to be in the text.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything else that we want to touch on?
No, I appreciate you telling your story today. And like before we sat down and started this, I just enjoy talking with people. I enjoy hearing their stories. I learned, you said some things today that have kind of motivated me to make a couple of changes for the positive that I know will be good for me. So yeah, I appreciate you taking the time.
Can we end on one last thing?
Absolutely.
All right. So if I had to, you said, what are the most important things or the best things people can do? We've touched on fitness. Nutrition is a big piece. I would say embracing animal foods is probably the biggest missing link for most people, because it's one of those things that has been demonized. We've been brainwashed to think that cows are this huge problem for our personal health. We've kind of come out of the era of, even though it's still stuck with us, that cholesterol is bad for us, and there's no nutritional argument against meat. And now there's this whole push against cows because they're bad for the planet and climate change. And I would just urge people to think about where that advice comes from. Anytime you see conventional wisdom, mainstream narrative advice that's parroted through news organizations, the WHO, NIH, it's like they're all saying the same thing. And why is that? There's an agenda behind it. I'd say animal foods are the most important and powerful thing that you can consume. And if you allow yourself to embrace that, a lot of things will change for you. When I mentioned before, being protein centric has been such a game changer for myself and my clients. I've been doing this a long time. And remember, I was an ex-vegan, so I've been there, done that. When people allow themselves to fully embrace animal foods, it is a freaking game changer. You had mentioned in your response to me, yeah, we try to do less meat, a little bit of chicken, fish. And that's the mentality of a lot of people. It's almost like you want to do the opposite of what you hear the mainstream narrative saying. So when the mainstream narrative says meat and beef is bad for you and cows are killing the planet, like, by the way, when I drive by any cow pasture and I look at these beautiful animals out there grazing on grass, I'm like, how the heck are these things contributing to climate change? The elephant in the room is modernization, industrialization, pollution, right? Mm-hmm. But it's almost like, why are cows getting all this blame? It's shifted from the nutrition, cholesterol, heart disease. Now it's an environmental thing. I'd say do the opposite of what the mainstream narrative says. And if you embrace beef, it's probably one of the most beneficial things you can consume, because we more resemble beef than any other animal out there with their digestive system, the way that they take in food. They detoxify all the plants they consume for us. They detoxify the toxins from the environment for us. If you allow yourself to embrace beef, animal foods in general, while at the same time avoiding the things that I feel like most people would agree is common sense things to avoid, like processed food, it's an absolute game changer, because it's hard to make a diet work long term if you're just eating salads and egg whites and freaking, chicken and fish. I mean, some people can make it happen, but there's a glorious way of eating out there that involves animal foods. And I think for most people, that's the biggest missing link.
I feel like a call to In-N-Out Burger is...
Dude, you mentioned
it's
earlier,
reaching out to me.
You were missing the burger and cheese, right? So you know what I had for dinner last night?
Cheeseburger.
3 half-pound patties with a piece of cheese and honey and some pickles.
Sounds good to me.
And it's extremely good for you. Yeah. It really is. And I'm a huge advocate for balance. I do carbohydrates. I do some vegetables that I tolerate. The reality is that when you think about the problems that people have with food, meaning intolerances and allergies and things like that, the majority of them are plant-based, right? So I think the ultimate goal for most of us would be, again, if we want to live a healthy, maybe not necessarily long, but a good quality life, right? Building a strong body, working out, having fitness as part of your life, and then eventually moving towards resistance training, being protein focused so that you can build and repair your body, making sure that animal foods are a big piece of that. It's a game changer for most people when they allow themselves to embrace that. It's just super freeing and liberating. And the majority of problems that we have come from plants. So when you focus on animal foods and protein foods, then you allow yourself to pick up on the signals that your body's giving you about what plants are problematic. I've learned exactly what plants I can eat and what plants I can't. That's my ultimate goal with my clients, is to give them the broadest spectrum of foods they can tolerate while still feeling good. And to do that, it's almost like animal foods can be used as an elimination diet, where you can, make your priority the animal foods and say, okay, so which of these plants are the things that are messing with me? And from that foundation, it's kind of easy to figure out.
Well, so if nothing else, for those listening, you have the freedom now to go out and eat something that's protein based, and those cows that you see out in the fields and out in the pastures, be grateful for them, because they're supplying our burgers for us. Absolutely.
And be grateful because they're the ones rebuilding the soil. You think about how the soil is built from herbivores and ruminants. Before we came over here and messed this freaking Americas up, it was, there are millions of bison roaming the lands. We've completely destroyed and depleted the topsoil here because of monocropping and moving towards more plant-based foods. And the reality is that cows are absolutely a crucial part of this cycle of, it's actually, again, do the opposite of what the mainstream narrative says. Mainstream narrative said cows are the problem. Cows are the solution. And I'm learning this, visiting with these different ranchers. It's a fascinating story to hear these guys talk about this, because they know it. I go look at the soil. I visited a guy out in California, Stemple Creek Ranch. I love him, Lauren Poncha, and just an amazing guy. He's doing great things over there. He's got a regenerative farm. you take a shovel and you stick it anywhere in any of his fields and you dig down like about a foot and you come up with all kinds of freaking creatures, worms, insects, microbes, and I'm like, this is healthy soil right here. This is what cows do. And that's all he does is he rotates grazing. He has a mentality of trying to regenerate the soil, but it's almost like the cows do it for him, if he raises them the right way. So
if I could just get you to be a little bit more passionate about this. I said in the beginning that you were passionate, not about just one thing, but a lot of things. And I really appreciate you sharing your message today. I know that people are going to be positively impacted. I say that a lot, but I mean, this one in particular, when we're talking about nutrition and we're talking about health and exercise, and you know what? If you do all that stuff, it's also going to help you have a better mental outlook as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. You think about experiencing the changes you want to experience, losing weight, feeling better energy levels, less digestive issues, less skin issues. I mean, it's just, we say people become happier by nature. Like people are chasing happiness. And what I found is that when you focus on these different health practices, something changes inside you and you're happier. It doesn't solve all your problems, but your life situations can stay the same. And if you're healthier, you're going to be happier by nature. And again, crucial part of it, the fitness thing we talked about, nutrition, animal foods, I think have to be a huge priority. That's my personal opinion and from experience. And then of course, we can learn about the other ancestral practices through those rules for life. If people want to get that free PDF that I'll send out to anyone who wants it.
There you go, folks. That'll be in the show notes, like I said. All right, Paul. Appreciate it, buddy. Thanks.
Hey, man. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Check back in 2 weeks for another interesting story here on Nobody Knows Your Story. Aloha.
Down a little old country road not far away, let's talk story. It's where my mama was born, it's where I come from, it's where my daddy fell in love not long ago.
Let's talk story.
Let's talk story. Well, a little of this and a little of that. Funny how time just slips away.
Cuz, we gonna talk story.
Eh? Let's talk story. Talk story. Let's talk story. Let's talk story. Talking story. Time for friends to share. Time to hear what's new.